Hello, make sure you watch this video to the end and then comment your opinion. Which is best for the world? Islam, Christianity, or secular humanism? And give your reasons why. And also, how can humans make it work for everybody in the world?
There is a condemnation of wokeism, which you do, which you condemn the woke and the mind virus of the woke. You condemn radical Islam. But I think, what do we then have to offer to these young people who are seeking something?
Rational secular humanism. Enlightenment values.
So do you share Ayan's diagnosis, the mind virus of wokeism, as she puts it, of Islamism's return to parts of the West? And Enlightenment humanism doesn't seem to have resisted that advance very successfully.
Well, let's press it harder then.
Rational secular humanism is itself an outcome of Christianity. And
well,
I think
I don't buy that.
It starts with the admission that rational secular humanism, the Enlightenment was able to take place within that Christian context, and it is a product of Christian civilization. It didn't happen in China, it didn't happen in the Middle East, it didn't happen anywhere else. It happened in these disputes between Christians. And I think part of that story and that whole history is one that needs to be celebrated and told and given to these young minds. And I think where you have a vacuum, something is going to fill it. And aside from the personal rewards that I reap from Christianity, and that you reap from Christianity, I think there is the societal and the civilizational context where this thing is going through the cracks, and without a counter message, a spiritual counter message, I think we're in very, very bad and very, very serious trouble.
It may be true historically that rational secular humanism grew out of Christianity, in the sense that historically that's where it came from. But you could say it's a reaction against Christianity rather than having being in concert with Christianity.
But even as a reaction against Christianity, the advances that we have made are rooted in that story. And my objection to throwing the baby out with the bathwater is that if you create this disconnect so that young people they haven't been told of those debates, they're reading works that tell them that everything that the white male Christian left behind is exploitative, it's destructive, it has to be replaced with something else, it's settler, colonial, whatever. It's being cut off from the roots of that civilization. And I think part of the reason why that vacuum came about, and it was possible, was because of this casting aside of Christianity and this attitude within atheism that if you say reason, everybody will suddenly start becoming reasonable and think reasonably. And in that sense, that's been a mistake. G.K. Chesterton was right.
Do you regret having been part of the new atheism movement, having preached atheism from that pulpit?
I do regret doing that, and I want to say that when I realized the damage that I was doing, and I was doing a great deal of damage by equating Islam with Christianity. First of all, it is false. We were talking about truth and falsehood, and not all religions are the same. Religions are different because they come out of different cultures and grow out of different contexts. So Christianity is not the same as Islam, and I'm guilty of having said, well, all faiths, all perceptions of God are the same and they're equally damaging. So I come back from that, and I also have come to regret the damage that I've done, and I want to make my friends like Richard and Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett and all the others, I want you to see what I see. And what I see is where you have a moral vacuum, something is going to fill it. I want you to see that the teachings of Christianity, just like you said, if there is a competition between Team Christian and Team Islam, you would be on Team Christian. That what you value in Christianity is something that really is absolutely necessary to pass on to the next generation. And we have failed the next generation by taking away from them that moral framework and telling them it's nonsense and false, but also not protecting them then from the external forces that come in for their hearts, their minds, and their souls.
I think you're wrong to say. I think that you're wrong to differentiate Christianity from Islam in that sense. I mean, these Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they have the same holy book. They believe in hell. They believe in a dictatorial God. They believe in so much that's similar. The problem with Islam is that it's 700 years out of date, and Christianity has moved on. Thank goodness, and mainly because most Christians don't actually believe it anymore. I mean, they don't take it seriously. The problem with Islam is that they take it seriously. They believe in their religion. They actually will fight to the death for their religion in the way that Crusaders used to, and thank goodness they no longer do. Christianity has grown out of that.
But how do you respond to Ayan's charge there? It feels like quite a grave charge that atheism movement, that dismantling, has left a whole generation inadequately equipped to deal with the forces that are coming at them, and that's what she's saying.
We have secular humanism, we have rationality, we have moral philosophy. Moral philosophy is how we decide which bits of Christianity we like and which bits we don't, which bits of the Bible we take as being moral and which ones we don't. We cherry pick. And the basis for our cherry picking is modern secular moral philosophy, which is a well-established philosophical discipline, and it's on that basis that we decide what is moral and what is not. We decide in favor of feminism, of all the things that we value today, which do not come from Christianity. They come in spite of Christianity, in spite of all religions.
So what is your diagnosis for why that has come about? Why so many people do seem to be so lost during this secular age? If it's not the fault of receding religion, why has it?
Well, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about when we say this moral vacuum. I mean, we're talking about wokeism, are we?
But first, I really do want to object, Freddie, to Richard, the statement you made about the holy books of Christianity and Islam being the same is absolutely untrue. And in fact, maybe a follow-up to this discussion would be to actually read these books to see what's in them and how different they are. And another mega difference is the characters of Jesus and the characters of Muhammad are absolutely radically different.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, but that is why the holy books are not the same. The story is absolutely not the same. They are different. And yes, each one of them makes a claim to being an Abrahamic religion. And there I do have to do a little bit of reading up on Abraham. I have to do a little bit of reading on the Old Testament. But as far as I can tell now, from where I am in the New Testament, it couldn't be more different from the Quran.
Well, okay. I've done a lot of reading up of it. The Old Testament is a very, very nasty book indeed. And the New Testament, on the face of it, is better. But the aspect of it which I mentioned before, the idea of God couldn't think of a better way to forgive the sins of humanity than to have his son crucified. That is a disgusting idea.
God gave us free will. God gave us free will. But again, I don't want us to go back to where we have agreed, to disagree. But in terms of, you asked, what do you mean by a moral vacuum? And what can we fill that moral vacuum with? The conception or the perception of the difference between right and wrong is, I think, something human beings have been trying to answer for millennia. And we have different human beings and different categories of human beings have reached different answers. And I think that if you take the history and the story of the moral story of this civilization, if you say, well, it's useless, let's mock it, let's cast it aside, what emerges is a generation of young people growing up who haven't been provided with their Christian or their Judeo-Christian moral framework, and they also, for some reason, haven't been given what you are saying you're offering now, which is a moral humanism, or I haven't seen any kind of organized, in the way religions are organized, temples of reason and people dedicated to delivering a message of morality to young people. What you
Do you
have
accept that, Richard? Just to
well, in that case, if that were true, then we need to work harder. But we don't. What we don't need is to saddle our morality with a lot of supernatural nonsense.
Well, what I think the assumption was that universities and schools would provide that, and that universities and schools, again, separated from their Christian underpinnings, started to say, we are neutral grounds, and we are going to adopt a moral neutrality towards religion and faith. And there, exactly, that's where the vacuum emerged. Young people looking for moral direction, not getting it from their own civilization, and other forces coming in and filling that out. And that is the crisis that you are witnessing now. And I think it is I'm not evangelizing, I'm not imposing a new or an old form of morality, but I'm saying that we are having a very, very serious moral crisis. And it is, I hope that this is just a fast conversation, but for those of us, I am coming out and saying, when I was advancing atheism and saying that Christianity is nonsense and it is just as nonsensical and as dangerous as Islam, I was absolutely wrong, and I contributed to this moral vacuum. And I stepped back.
Christianity, I mean, the largest Christian church at the moment is the Roman Catholic Church. And they are the people who've got the organization going. They've got the whole of South America. They've got an enormous number of people. And and they stand for total opposition to abortion, contraception. This is not a good organization for morality.
I think the challenge to you is, if you say the Catholic Church or the Anglican Church or any of the other Christian churches are either, in terms of your words, either nonsensical or immoral or useless, or regardless of however you characterize them, if you don't have an alternative, and I think from at least the last 5 or so decades, we see that no alternative has been established. Again, the assumption was reason and enlightenment and humanism is simply going to emerge from education. The higher your level of education, the more reasonable you are. Now, what we see on display in our universities is the very opposite. That is a moral crisis.
Do you accept that?
Well, you seem to be saying that the organization isn't there. I mean, we need a church of humanism or something like that. I've never been in favor of that kind of thing, but
do you accept the observation that Ayan is making? Do you think that's true, that having expected enlightened humanism to take the space if religion receded, that didn't happen?
I was never that optimistic. I mean, I never thought we were going to have a sort of brave new world of enlightened humanism. I was just interested in the truth, and the idea that that somehow we were on a mission to found a new church or something like that. We just never were.
So you didn't think about what would happen afterwards?
No, I mean, I can't speak for my colleagues, but for as far as I was concerned, what I was interested in is what is true. And I believe that all religions are false, and I'm interested in what is scientifically true.
There's been... We have a short amount of time left, and before we conclude, I feel we should touch on this question of Islam, because it actually seems, I think most people watching will be surprised by some of the language and the intensity of your agreement on this issue. You described it as a nasty religion. That's strong terms. What do you mean by that?
I don't mean that individuals are nasty. I mean that the ideas of things like the penalty for apostasy is death. I mean, what kind of a religion is it that has to penalize people who leave it by killing them?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a revolting idea. And
are you, like Ayan, are you anxious by the protests? Do you watch what's happening in the news with anxiety? In that respect, she seemed to be saying earlier that Islamist ideas are growing.
I wasn't aware of that. I mean, the protests that are going on in American university at the moment look to me more like anti-Jewish, anti-Semitism.
And the vector for this virulent anti-Semitism is Islam. It's radical Islam. On every university, there is a Muslim student association. There are Islamic centers, there are mosques, there are websites, and they propagate, and sometimes in the most sinister ways, their faith and their antipathies, and the antipathy that radical Islamists hold against Jews have had, like, they're running amok in our universities and our schools. So if from one day to the next we wake up, the 7th of October last year, that horrible event happened where 1,200 Israelis were killed, many of them young people, many of them actually on the left, in kibbutzim, and many women raped and people mutilated. And you would think that in making that moral reckoning, that students here or anywhere, even fellow Muslims have said, this is absolutely heinous and it has to be condemned all the way. That is not what we are seeing. What we are seeing is the investment that radical Muslims made here on our soil. Those young people completely brainwashed into coming out and blaming the victim, draping themselves in kafirs, shouting genocidal slogans and chants on our campuses, and thinking that they are replicating 1968 and see themselves as anti-war patrons. There is something that is going on. There is the mind virus of wokeism. There is the mind virus of radical Islam. And atheism is not the answer. I cannot go with all conscience to these young people and say there is nothing to believe in, because the more we say there is nothing to believe in, there is nothing, then someone else comes and fills that nothing with something, and I don't like what I'm seeing.
Are you anxious? I mean, some of the language you've used this evening, I'm not sure if you said clash of civilizations, but it was moving in that direction, will be anxious-making to people. I mean, you are now a Christian. Are you really hoping to go back to the days where Christians take up intellectual arms against Muslims and we have a kind of civilizational conflict? It will be very anxious-making to people to hear that, perhaps.
I'm not going there. I'm going to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And you look at some of those frat students, and please just take a look at how they responded. Where there is an existing faith that is strong, it is very difficult for all of these other mind viruses to encroach upon and take over. That is as far as I'm going. I'm not saying let's start the crusades again. I'm just saying let's stand for what we have. Let's embrace it and let's defend it. And to defend it, you have to have a counter message. There is a great deal of activism knocking on young people's doors, telling them, do you want to know the difference between right and wrong? Do you want to know the difference between truth and false? And I don't see any counter activism coming from humanists or coming from atheists. I see you and my fellow friends just as bewildered as anyone else when you look at this. So the people who are in charge of universities, people who are in charge of educating and developing young minds are looking on and thinking, what the heck is going on here? And that is not the right attitude. And it never has been the right attitude. There's a great deal of denial. Yes, there's a clash of civilizations. And this clash of civilizations has been going on at least since 1989. And the attitude of Western leaders, political leaders, academic leaders, media leaders, has been to hide in denial. It's been to deny it. And the more you deny it, the more those adversaries who are clashing with us benefit from it. And right now, I don't think atheist humanism is offering any answers. I challenge you to come up with an elaborate message to fight these people.
What is your message to your Muslim or formerly Muslim followers? I mean, you have many, many people who see you as a beacon of someone who has left their Islamic faith behind and has found success and flourished in a secular Western society. What do you say to them now that...
So again, there are a billion and some Muslims, and there are Muslims who are peace-loving, who hate the Islamists, who hate the message of hatred and blowing people up and closing the minds and threatening people that if you leave Islam, you're going to be killed, which is absolutely revolting. So right now, I have more genuine Muslim friends than I ever had before, because the same individuals who reject, they still identify as Muslim, but they reject the idea of forcing faith on other people. And so a lot of them, my Muslim friends, are scratching their heads and wondering why Western civilization is committing suicide, why they're allowing this, in the name of freedoms, in the name of freedom of speech, freedom of association, and freedom of religion. We have allowed a cult of power, Islamism, a political totalitarian ideology, to seed itself here, deepen and broaden and grow, and we have nothing in return to say. And it's a cult that wants to destroy the very freedoms that it uses to advance its agenda.
So what is your invitation to your Muslim or formerly Muslim followers? Is it become a Christian?
I'm not telling people to become Christian. All I have done is explain why I have become a Christian. I'm not saying to fail. I did say at one point in 2010, leave, if you're a good person, leave Islam, and told the Catholic Church, why don't you win hearts and minds that way? That is not what I am saying today. But I am saying to those fellow Muslims, I'm in a club with the Clarity Conference. It's Muslim reformers, ex-Muslims, people with a background like mine. And what we do is, if nothing else, just make you aware, if the world is ruled according to Sharia, if the people who are advancing this cult get what they want, we are going to see women caged up, we are going to see beheadings, we are going to see civilization go down the drain. They've demonstrated it over and over again. Al-Qaeda has done it, ISIS has done it, Hamas is doing it today. I think that we need to come out of denial and see as plain as daylight, and as plain as they're holding, they keep showing us all the time. If they prevail, this is what they're going to do. Ask the citizens of Iran, ask the citizens of Saudi Arabia, ask Mali, Nigeria, under Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab. That is what when they win, they are going to subject us to the same barbaric and heinous crimes that they subject to those whom they prevail over.
I'm going to we are out of time. We could talk for many hours. But I want to give the final word to you, Richard. What has this evening's conversation made you think?
We have two epidemiological theories here. We have a vicious mind virus. We agree about that, and we agree about your prognostications about that. The question is, do we combat it by vaccination with a mild form of the virus, or do we say no viruses at all and go for enlightened rationality?
You're a religious anti-vaxxer, that. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking both Richard Dawkins and Ayaan Hirsi Ali.